Welcome to Upthinking Finance, a podcast that offers a unique and discerning view of economics and financial planning. Here are your hosts, Emerson Fersch and Amy Lenoble.
Welcome to another episode of Upthinking Finance. Fred Rogers, also known as Mr. Rogers, once said, "Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else." So at Capital Investment Advisors, Amy and I spend probably about 80% of our time doing retirement planning, transition planning, helping prepare people for their life after work. And in addition to being prepared financially, there's also the emotional and mental aspect of it as well, which we visited in episode 74 with Dr. Sarah Yogev. I can tell you in 30 years of, over 30 years in this industry, that there's no one plan that fits anybody. Nobody follows a blueprint. It's a very, very individual transition. And so for that reason, that inspired this episode today.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to be able to present our real life clients that are experiencing this transition to and through retirement in this unique episode mashup. You're going to hear various opinions and perspectives on the idea of retirement, how to make it fruitful, and as Emerson mentioned, if it's even a path that's necessary in someone's life. We interviewed 6 different clients, 3 that are in this new season and 3 that are still working, asking them a series of questions. Just a heads up for our listeners, these questions will not be heard, but they're going to be shown on the screen. So we do recommend for this episode watching via YouTube or Rumble. But if not, the gaps that you hear between the testimonials reflects a new question being discussed. So the topics we explored were thoughts on the idea of retirement, favorite things about this new chapter, what's most loved about working, as well as the driving motivation to continue to work despite financial success, the biggest difficulty in this post-career phase, and lastly, any helpful feedback or advice to assist in preparation for this life pivot. So Emerson and I just hope you enjoy this one-of-a-kind episode with the expectation that it will inspire new revelations, encouragements, and ambitions within you.
Sometimes you plan it, I always knew I'd retire. I just didn't quite expect to do it early.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the word retirement or even the whole concept of it.
Okay, now why do I need to retire?
When I was much younger, my thoughts leaned towards developing a career, starting and hopefully doing a good job with a family, furthering my career. And as I got older, I have to admit, I did start looking forward to retirement, although I always wondered, am I going to get there?
My thoughts about retirement is, oh no. What else would I do?
My thoughts on retirement, that's kind of a big question because I'm not quite retired yet.
I've never been a really big fan of retirement and the idea of you plan for your time in life. It's not something retirement. I'm not big on planning for a time in my life where I'm going to be doing something totally different.
A while back, maybe for the past, up until maybe 8 years ago, I thought I never thought about retiring. I didn't think I was going to ever retire because I'm slightly a workaholic.
I can only volunteer so much and clean the house so much and then I'd be ready to go back to work.
But no, my thoughts were it was a goal. And while I couldn't define an age at which it may occur, I was sure hoping that someday it would.
I've got 14 horses here that I take care of full time, and it's a living. I don't know if that's retirement because I work harder now than I ever have, but it's fun.
I had a partner at the firm who ended up retiring before me. And so my firm also had asked me, could I stay on? So I chose to stay on.
When I left my primary work was well before, the traditional retirement age. It was based on a life decision. Our son was 10. He was turning 10. And I just was like, oh my gosh, that 10 years went by really fast. And when you look at, you may, if you're lucky, have another 10. But then, then he'll be launching into life. I left at the top of my game. People thought I was nuts because I was at the top of what I was doing.
For me, retirement would be to do your own thing in your own terms, which I guess I'm kind of doing that right now in my business.
What is it about retirement that would make you happy? And I look at retirement and go, I'm not sure I would get as much happiness out of what I'm doing now.
The thing that I enjoy the most is not having to get up to an alarm clock, getting up when I actually naturally wake up, and then having my coffee while I do my Wordle and check email. I love that. I love not having to get up to an alarm.
My favorite thing would be revisiting a lot of things I did early in my life. I mean, it's said that oftentimes things go full circle, and in my case, they certainly did.
Well, the main thing is having control of my schedule, being able to decide where I'm going to put my time each day. I mean, it's not completely it's not completely within my control, but for the most part, I can pretty much decide where I'm going to put my time.
Because I've done a lot of really important things in my retirement. I've joined a Pops orchestra in this little town where we live. I've started singing, sometimes in public. I've written 2 books.
Things I enjoyed actually prior to Mom and prior to you. I was a full-time musician and traveled some, toured some, really enjoyed that. And ultimately, I married your mother and you came along happily. And I thought, that particular choice of career is not conducive to having and raising a family. So I didn't give something up. I got something better. What you?
Personally and selfishly, I love that you got something back and better than what you gave up. But I'm glad it came back to you.
Before, you have a schedule, you have things that you're responsible for, things that you have to do. That doesn't mean I still don't, but I can move with it and shift it and change it more. Every moment of life, there's something to be learned, no matter what you're doing. So it's not so much, a waste of time, but having control over my life means I'm going to make something even more meaningful to me personally.
When I retired, I just thought, well, geez, I wonder if I can still play music. So I went out and sat in with a friend of mine's band, and I really enjoyed it. And the next thing I knew, I was working here and there as a professional keyboard player again. And then the next thing I knew, there were several bands vying for my services, which I thought was interesting because, I'm older now and you don't think of that type of thing when, at that age. But nonetheless, I became a full-time musician again. So here I am in retirement. I'm playing the piano anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week. I can't say it as a career, but it's certainly been a great source of additional revenue and just a tremendous amount of fun. So that's, retirement came full circle for me, and I'm truly enjoying what I'm doing.
Well, what I love about working the most, I think now it's running my own small business. I have a horse boarding facility here at home in Cedar City, Utah. The place is growing like a weed, and that is a bad thing and a good thing.
I think what I love the most about my work is being able to continue great relationships that I have had over many, many decades with my clients, and being still of value to them, being able to help them and collaborate, solve their problems, to work closely with them and then be valued by them. And then I think the second thing that still is a lot of fun is my collaboration with my peers and coworkers.
I love the work because I get to watch people as they go through these steps of progress, because what I do is a learning process. So as people learn how to put it into their daily lives, they come back and tell me things.
I'm not a person that has invested in 401ks and all that kind of stuff, where people with normal full-time jobs have the investment opportunity to do that. I've always been freelance. And then I stopped my freelance career to go cowboy for $1,200 a month in cash. And the greatest times of my life were those times. However, financially speaking, it's the dumbest decision I've ever made. But the happiest times of my life were those ranch days and weeks and months. Finally, after all these years of doing work for other people, can do my own thing. And it's just super rewarding. You think, yeah, you're working a job and it's just for somebody else's dream. You're helping them do that. And now it's my own. So it just feels great.
My aim is to make people's lives easier. People who are struggling, working harder than they have to, and the work that I do makes their lives easier.
I like the idea of continuing to be able to earn money because I have some things projects that I wanted to do for home improvement.
Still, my passion for horses, that is the driving factor for wanting to work. I just want to be with them. I can't imagine sitting on the couch as a retirement and watching the NFL or whatever, or rodeo, or whatever my interest would be, or racing. That's watching somebody else live their life and not me.
I can't imagine anywhere else I would get the satisfaction that I do out of this. And I think out of all the things I do, that's what I would miss. I would miss the kind of satisfaction I get when I talk to people and they are realizing that their lives are easier. They no longer have the difficulties that they were struggling with, and they're going on and finding new ways to live. So how do you put away that satisfaction?
Being asked by my firm to be able to pass on my years of experience to my junior team up and coming. So I kind of feel like I'm pouring my experience into them and helping them pursue the opportunities that our firm has for them in whatever direction they want to go.
The driving motivation for me to keep working is really my passion for horses. So I think it's I've never been a rodeo guy. I've done a little bit of that, but not enough to, to do anything. And I felt like the caretaking for other people's horses has just really gotten to my blood. Nutrition, care, clean water, good shelters, good large corrals and turnouts and all that. And to me, it's like the most motivating thing to me is see my customers super happy with what I have.
It's nice because you can say that and feel that you can pass on and help your coworkers avoid pitfalls and maybe, have success. And yeah, I think it would be a good kind of bookend mark for my, tenure in this industry.
So I saw kids with learning disabilities, difficulty in school, behavioral problems. So it's been one success story after the other.
You got to be careful not to become a professional spectator. And so I feel, it's the other way around. You have to live life. You have to live your dream, kind of. And that's what this has become. There's a danger to just sit on the couch and watch other people live their life while you're on the sidelines.
I think it was Sam's death.
The transition was difficult because I imagine a lot of people feel this way, but I certainly felt this way of, one, am I ready to do this, both financially and mentally?
I hit the most difficult part of a transition in life when Ethan was born.
Actually, his actual death wasn't the hardest thing. I think it was accepting a terminal cancer diagnosis that was the toughest thing. I think I did almost all my grieving then when we got that diagnosis. And then he lived another 2 years and he did very well for a year and a half of that.
When Ethan came, we already knew where our priority was going to be. I mean, I had actually quit my job and they asked me not to.
Interestingly, when I first retired, and I woke up, I remember that for the next several days, it was like, oh my God, did I oversleep? I mean, don't I have to be somewhere? And then it was like, no, you're good. It's all right now.
The biggest challenge was going from high just production and producing every day and just getting stuff done to literally, if I hit two things in the course of a day that I was able to accomplish with this little infant, that was lucky. I mean, I had to gear way down. If I got laundry done, that was an accomplishment.
When you have to do something every day, and I did, as a matter of both personal responsibility and enjoyment, there's a certain drive in your life that enables you to do that thing, whatever that thing is. And, when you think about retirement, that particular have to is going to go away. My best advice would be this. I think everyone, as they approach retirement, once again, I've said this previously, they want to be reasonably assured that financially they've prepared themselves for this, because it's one of those decisions that once you make it, if you change your mind or find that you have to change your mind, it may be more difficult to go back.
If I could give somebody advice on how to prepare for this transition to retirement, I would say, well, prior to having to retire, think about what you want your life to look like at retirement. Do you want to still live where you're living, for example? And for me, the answer was no.
I think my friends and my parents were certainly examples. They were supposed to retire. That was the expectation, right? They prepared financially for it. There had been years-long process of preparing for that. And it was something they were really looking forward to. So I think that's the big thing, is like, you have to look for the things that you're looking forward to.
If I'd had to say one small thing, and it could be huge, is to have something in your life that you're totally passionate about. I have friends of mine that have jobs, full-time jobs, 8 to 5, 5 days a week, that are just working for other people. And they have never built an authentic hobby, passion, or anything that they're involved in.
Those who don't have interest, I think there are people out there whose lives have always sort of revolved around maybe the family and don't have a lot of outside interests, and suddenly they have time on their hands they didn't have before. So those people, I think, need to have a plan. They need to say, what have I always wanted to do that I never got a chance to do?
You need a life plan too. Don't just assume that, you're going to wake up retired and, your days are just going to be fulfilling by virtue of the fact that you're retired. You need to have a plan. It was my wife that suggested to me prior to retirement, let's sit down and talk about what are we going to do when we retire. You need a life plan. What are you going to do? And that's in my opinion, equal importance to, am I ready for this next step? Know what that next step is.
I think the biggest detriment for me, it's like, what does retirement look like? And I have seen people, friends of mine, that are now completely there, and it's all they do is they just sit at home and watch TV. I've also heard of people that do that, and then that's basically pretty quick the end, because they just shut down.
Was any of it planned? Other than spending time really being involved in our son's schooling and life, everything else just kind of presented itself and I went with it. So what was nice was being able to really put some time into the more creative things that I was interested in.
It wasn't ever going to be a problem for me to plan or decide what I was going to do in retirement, because I have a lot of interests, things I can easily do in retirement. In fact, they're easier to do in retirement, like writing the books, because, you don't have time when you're working to do that necessarily. To play in the orchestra with all the rehearsals and everything. All of these things that I always did are even easier to do in retirement and more fun as a result.
That would be my advice, is to have an idea of what you're going to do. It could be as simple as revisiting hobbies you once had that you didn't necessarily give up, but you needed to move on from for a different set of reasons. That could be part of your plan. Again, travel could be part of your plan. I know for Liz and I, it was, I wish we had time to take a motorcycle trip around here every now and again. And we really didn't. We couldn't as responsible parents, and we just really didn't have the time. And now we do that sort of thing. We wanted to learn the two-step. So we took dance classes and we learned to do that. Are we going to travel? Is that going to be our focus? Are we going to try to spend more time with the children? Is that our focus? Because they're kind of spread out. you got to have a plan. You just can't wake up and assume the day's going to, throw flowers your way.
So I guess everybody's different. Some people like to have phases mapped out that they work towards in their life. I'm not. To me, the first half of my life, the first phase of adulthood to me is learning, discovery, and, gaining expertise and experiences, which prepared me now for the life I'm living now.
Everything was driven to me to be with horses and to learn more. And I'm still that way. I'm 66 years old. I still want to learn more, because when you stop learning, you're going to be done. Maybe get involved more with your church or more with an organization that needs people. I mean, there's so many volunteer opportunities out there, or just a little business on the side, or art, or something. Go on walks, nature. I mean, where I live, it's all around me. I think just to soak in where you live is a really big deal. And I think to just stay active. I mean, retirement to me would never be, you can't do nothing. It's just not even a question.
One side or the other is going to look better, right? The retirement life is going to be appealing and look great. Some of my friends have done that, and I certainly appreciate the way they're enjoying themselves now. I admire that. I look at that and go, I don't think I'd be happy with that. So I think the thing you have to do mentally, financially, spiritually, all of it, you have to look at what makes you happy.
Some people like working towards a retirement. My advice would be pick your own path and live the life that you want to live. And if you like it defined as a retirement defined by how society looks at it, it's fine. That's a blueprint. I typically don't follow blueprints. So pick your path and don't wait.
What I feel has also been extremely important is to have a financial advisor team like yourself and Amy, for example, where, we really spent the time talking about what the plans were, what it looked like. Let's figure out how you're going to get there. And also another invaluable resource was having a really great CPA and I have a great CPA local that I think you referred me to. He's fantastic. And then I also ended up with an incredible additional financial advisor on the trust side of things. So having that and a personal relationship, it's people I can trust is huge.
Having that plan outside of just a financial plan is what made my retirement, as I see it, successful.
To sit down and start watching other people live life, I think that's the end.
I was in a lot of conversations during that time. I can tell you that in every one of those conversations, the question that friends and colleagues were asking themselves was, did I do enough? Did I live enough? And that's what they were reflecting on, was, did I do enough? And life is meant to be fully participated in. So my advice would be live it and live smart, and don't define it based on all these society norms.
Emerson Fersch and Amy Lenoble are registered representatives, and securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and the companies they represent are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Capital Investment Advisors, LLC. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal expert. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal.